this is where I think everybody loses it, where they have all their frustration and they can't go any further with insurance companies. They have all these fights, before the estimate. Jobs, they get lost because they get stalemated with the insurance company and everything just sort of stops. Not with me. I'm moving forward at all times. As soon as we sign the job, we're going to look for items that can be done. If there's still wet drywall, we're going in there and we're removing the wet drywall. I mean, let's get a dumpster out here. Let's get this job site set up. Let's start incurring charges now. Let's plant our flag, right? This will keep the client from backing out on you too. And this will also justify as to why they need to start turning over the money. Let's move forward with the repairs. And this puts the pressure on the insurance company. Like, we're not waiting on you. We're moving forward. We are giving you the opportunity to come out and inspect this and review everything ahead of time. But as far as anything you have approved, we're moving forward. Like, we're moving forward with anything you have approved, right? We're ordering materials, we're planning this job, we're getting our permits. We are moving forward, baby. We're moving forward. So, like I said before we broke, this is my favorite one. I think it's something that's going to help most of you here, and that is the A bucket, B bucket, and C bucket. That's my name for it, okay? And it's an easy way to remember. And the idea is really like, how can you do a bunch of these jobs and keep everything kind of the same, like where you can scale it and you can try to have a process for how you deal with things as a company, as a team, right? And I think that this is the best way to do that. But remember when I said that you want to be in the arena where you're working with the adjuster from the top of the list, from your estimate or from the first item in the estimate and working your way down one by one. That's where you're going to win the most, especially if you've done a good inspection, you have a lot of documentation. You've put everything into a PDF report that really contains all of the sources of information. It's got all your building codes, all your photos, all of the line items, and anything else that's necessary to prove what's going to take to get this job done. Now we just have to get the adjuster to pay attention to what you have. Like I said, I don't expect them to ever read that stuff. I did have one adjuster in Kansas City one time, and Overland Park, I think it was, something like that. But Kansas City, where it was a tree that fell on a house, and it was really bad damage. Like, it kind of fell right on the middle where there's a load-bearing wall and did a lot of structural damage, and there's a lot of emergency work that had to be done, and it was a really big estimate. And I remember it was one of those deals where they made me send the estimate for the adjuster to come back, and I sent the estimate in, and the adjuster came out, and I'm hoping that he never saw it, but he saw it. He's got it all printed out on a clipboard, the whole thing, like, hundreds of pages. And I'm like, what? This must be a new adjuster or something, because most adjusters don't pay attention to that stuff. But anyway, we're going through the job, and I'm describing for him certain things about the job. And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I read that in your estimate. I mean, you did a really good job breaking that down. I'm like, yeah, right. You didn't read my estimate, you know what I mean? And so we keep going through it. And we were walking through the house. We go to the kitchen where the load-bearing wall, and I told him, I was like, see, this is why we have to have the structural engineer, because there's a load. Oh, yeah, no, I know. You have it in your. And I realized all of a sudden, it just hit me. He really did read my estimate. He read it, and it was like a freaking tear came right to my eye. I couldn't believe it. Like, this guy actually paid attention to my stuff. So that's just to demonstrate a tear didn't come to my eye. But it's very surprising when they actually read your stuff, right? Now, but I want to be in that arena where we're going right from the top. And so again, they might act crazy, like, what is this that you sent me, And it's what item or items did you have a problem with? Try to nail them down on it, and they're going to throw out some other random stuff. They probably didn't read it. And it's like, hey, if you have some time, I would love to sit down with you. We'll just start from the top. That's actually what they're trained to do anyway. You know what I mean? Is to go through that reconciliation process from the top. So now, whatever it is that we're talking about, I now, like, they're gonna now ask me why that's in there, why that item's in there, right? Why do you need this? Why is it necessary? Or the policy doesn't cover that, or we're not paying for that, or that's not, they're going to give you a reason why they're not going to pay for it, right? So now when we get to these items, I want to respond to them one of three ways. So like my response comes out of either the A bucket, the B bucket, or the C bucket, okay, as we go down through that process. And I'll start with the A bucket. Now, remember the way that I write my estimates, it's remove, 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 remove. And if there is a roof, I usually have my roof first, so that it's remove ridge vent, remove ridge cap, stuff that they're not likely to even pay for most of the time. Sometimes they do, but they're not likely to want to pay for those. They're like, oh, we're not going to pay for the removal of the ridge vent, right? Or the removal of the ridge cap. Why are they saying that? It's not like it's not going to be required. Yeah, it's definitely going to be required. But it's all included in the tear-off. No, it's not included in the tear-off. We know that already. We went through that. So the footnote already says it in there. It's not included in the tear-off. It shows you the official, exact word description. But you know what? It's one of those things that's not going to change during the build. Like it's not one of those things that we can argue about what's going to happen during the build, right? We both know you're going to have to remove that item, in order to do this repair. It's not like we're arguing about something that hasn't happened yet. We both agree on that. It's just that they don't want to pay for it, okay? Well, my A bucket would be for items like that, which is, the A bucket is simply, no problem, throw it right out. That's what it is. It's like it's giving it back to them. It's almost intentionally put there as low-hanging fruit for them to take. Because remember, they don't think in terms of dollar amounts, so I want them to gain that victory right away. Like they got me to agree to remove these line items, In my submission email to the insurance company, one of the ones I use is also in the files, but essentially it says something like, we've been hired as the general contractor to perform all repairs that are prescribed by this claim, attached is our Xactimate estimate. I understand that currently we are far apart in our estimates, right? But I just wanted to assure you and let you know that we are extremely reasonable and willing to work it out, to get on the same page with you. If you need to meet us back out there, if you need me to talk to you on the phone, if you need me to get you more documentation, I'd be happy to do it. Just want to work together with you, roll up our sleeves together, right? Work together for the common good of our mutual client. You know what I mean? Like something like that. But so when that comes up and they're like, oh, we're not paying for that, we're not paying for that. That's already included in the tear-off. I want to actually let them know, no, it's not included in the tear-off. If you look at the official description, I want to let them know I know what I'm doing. I'm not a pushover, you know what I mean? I want to let them know that it is a favor. Like you didn't just beat me, but I'm going to give you a favor because I want to work it out, right? So actually, I just want to let you know, that's not included in the tear-off if you look at the description. But I'll tell you what, I think what I'm hearing you say is if you put it in there, it'll probably just get kicked right back out. I don't want that. So by all means, throw that out. Okay, that's my A bucket. Now this is something, if I say throw it out, I'm never going to bring it back in later. You know what I mean? Like when I say it's gone forever, okay? Remember, I'm starting my estimate. I want to document every little thing that I find. Every item that I found in the inspection, I want every single item to be on that estimate. Every single one of them, I don't care, like if the insurance company thinks that you should mask and cover the light fixtures, I'm putting detach and reset them, starting from the highest position, because I know they're going to push me down. I know I'm going to have to go down to a lower position, but where I end up, I want to be at the highest position that I could have ended up. The only way to do that, like I had this guy in Florida, and his big thing was, it doesn't matter what we do. He was a mitigation contractor. He said it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter. If we turn in an estimate and we do building codes, he said, documentation, photo, we do everything, moisture, readings, everything. And it doesn't matter. If we turn in an estimate and it's 8,000, they kick us down to 4,000. We turn in an estimate at 12,000, they kick us down to 8,000. It didn't matter what he had, they were always kicking him down like a big chunk, And it's work already performed, so it's kind of a hard fight to have. There's not work still to come. And he's like, right? And I was just kept giving him ideas and things. He's like, no, we tried that, we did, And I said, well, how about, okay, I got it. Well, how about, so you're saying the estimate needs to be 12,000? Okay, send them an estimate for 16,000. You know what I mean? Straight up. There's got to be an answer to everything, Like if they're just constantly knocking you back down, get it up. Like you don't have enough items in there. You know what I mean? Like then when they knock you back down, then you're where you're supposed to be. So anyway, the A bucket is essentially just take it out, never to be seen from again, no problem. See, told you I was reasonable, willing to work it out. And they're like, dang, So then we kind of go through that estimate. The first couple of items may be that way. Maybe the first 3 items. But if you add those items up, they're not worth that much money. They're really not. They're tiny little dollar amounts. So I'm actually happy to give them to them. If I'm giving them anything out of the A bucket where I'm just throwing it out the window, no questions asked, then I hope they're smaller dollar amount items. Does that make sense? Now, but if it's anything else, so those are items, how do you determine which are the A bucket? And it's items that aren't going to change during the job. So to give you an example, what if you're saying that you're not going to be able to take out this siding, to fix this siding, without also taking out the flashing that's behind it, which is required by, one thing leads to another, and that's connected to the roof, and you disagree on all that. Like, you're playing it out for the adjuster, and the adjuster's like, nope, I don't think that's going to be required, right? See, that's different. That's something where, who's right? Who's right? You don't know. You don't know. Like, one thing is waste factors. Like, stop arguing about waste factors. Stop really arguing about everything, in my opinion. But waste factors is a silly thing to argue about because, again, we're doing this during the estimate phase. It's an estimate. So really nobody knows exactly what the waste factor is really going to be. Like, I hear people all the time like, oh, no, I do. I've got a real sophisticated spreadsheet, and I do this and that. I do these formulas and calculations, and that's great. I think you should use that to try to get them convinced that it's going to take more of a waste factor. Oh, I use the Eagle View, whatever it is. It might be carpet waste factors and wood that you're arguing about, but you don't need to argue about it because, like, for me, I'm probably wrong because I probably have way too much waste factor. I have the ridge and the starter. I have everything loaded up on there because I'm starting from the highest position. Let them knock me down then, okay? Maybe they have they're like, well, we do 5% or 5% waste on gables and 10% on hips. Or maybe they do 15, depending on what insurance company it is. Let them do whatever they want. Maybe they do waste factors but no ridge and starter. Or ridge and starter but no, I don't care. What do you want me to do, Mr. Adjuster? Do you want me to take off the waste and just keep the ridge and starter? Do you want me to take off the ridge and starter and just keep the waste? Or do you want me to take it all off? I really don't care. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I'll take it all off. You know why? Because I know that you're really going to pay for what it actually really takes, aren't you? Like, that's what you're going to pay for, right? What it actually really takes. So in other words, all this right now we're just arguing about, it's just a hypothetical. So guys, the adjuster's wrong on the waste factor. I'm wrong on it. You're wrong on it. We're all wrong about the waste factor. So why are we arguing about it? It's just a hypothetical. Let's wait till we build, then we'll know exactly how. So if we want to have that argument, I'll be like, I'll take it off, no problem, as long as you're willing to revisit it when it comes time. That's my point on that. But that's an item where it's going to change. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. We can argue all we want, but we don't know. Now back to the A bucket though, taking off the ridge cap, we know that's part of the job. So that's an easy way to indicate that that's an item that should go right into the A bucket, right? We're going to do that at the end of this segment. Okay. So that's the A bucket. Take it off. Throw it out the window. No problem. I'm reasonable. See, I'm reasonable. But as we go down further into the estimate, we're probably getting into higher dollar items because it's remove, remove, remove. When we start getting into more, the dollar amounts start going up, right? And we're getting into probably code-related items that are required by code, right? I'm not as easy to let go of these items, Like, now they're going to start to see more resistance as we go down, right? So why do you have this item? That's not needed. Well, actually, that's required by code. Well, you need to send me the code for that. Okay, well, actually, I don't need to send you anything. I'll show you page 32 through 36. And that's how we do. We have all the source in here, and we can now just direct them to where it's at. Well, you can see all the photos of the items in question, page 32 through 36. You can see the adoptions showing which codes are required on page 27. You can see the codes that come into play on this, 37, 38, 39. You just point them to the documentation that's going to back you up on that. So it means that we're having this fight right now. I'm going to try to prove my case. I'm going to do everything I can right now with documentation, evidence, and proof to prove my case. That's the B bucket, okay? Question?
Yeah, would you ever type up the codes and give it to them in a text format to make it easier for them to put into their notes, or you just do the JPEGs?
I just do the JPEGs. And that's the reason why, because I can certainly, and you can try this, I can certainly make it more easy for them, okay? And I can put these things right into the line item, put attachments there. I can do things like this, right? But I actually kind of keep it vague, because the more specific you get, these guys don't know anything about building codes. So they'll misinterpret you and start using that against you. So I kind of keep it vague, and I like to make them put in the work. Like, in other words, if they tried to figure it out on their own, they couldn't. They really couldn't, unless they figured out how these building codes work, And I think I would rather keep it that way. I like to keep it, they don't understand, they can't see their way around, keep them that way. If that makes any sense. But the B bucket, again, so the A bucket is throw it out. The B bucket is no, we're having this fight, and I'm going to prove to you why you need to pay for it. Does that mean it's going to work? No, because we're dealing with humans, and you already know how insurance companies are. So many of those things, you're going to prove it, black and white. It's going to be proven to them. You're going to give them the documentation, and they're still going to refuse to pay for it, okay? So this is where I think everybody loses it, where they have all their frustration, and they can't go any further with insurance companies. They have all these fights, before the estimate, jobs they get lost because they get stalemated with the insurance company, and everything just sort of stops. Not with me. I'm moving forward at all times. As soon as we sign the job, we're going to look for items that can be done. If there's still wet drywall, we're going in there and removing the wet drywall. I mean, let's get a dumpster out here. Let's get this job site set up. Let's start incurring charges now. Let's plant our flag, right? This will keep the client from backing out on you too. And this will also justify as to why they need to start turning over the money. Let's move forward with the repairs. And this puts the pressure on the insurance company. Like, we're not waiting on you. We're moving forward. We are giving you the opportunity to come out and inspect this and review everything ahead of time. But as far as anything you have approved, we're moving forward. Like, we're moving forward with anything you have approved, right? We're ordering materials. We're planning this job. We're getting our permits. We are moving forward, baby. We're moving forward. So now the A bucket, throw it out. B bucket, we're going to fight it out. We're going to have this fight. And then so for all the items that we were unsuccessful in winning, this is the adjuster that, nope, still not paying for it. Now that item by default, automatically becomes a C bucket item, okay? And what is the C bucket? Glad you asked. The C bucket is where all the power's at, I think. This is what keeps you in the game always. And that is based on, I've already alluded to it earlier, and I'll kind of give you a briefer version of it, which is, so you've heard it already. The C bucket is, okay, well listen, you don't think that's going to be required. I'm pretty sure it is, okay? But ultimately, my job, you've heard this already a number of times, you know what's coming, right? Is to perform, bless you. My job is the thing that I was hired to do is to perform all the repairs that are prescribed by you, okay? So now I'm looking at your prescription, I'm attempting to carry out your repairs. I don't see how that's going to be possible. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to give it an old college try. I'm going to give it a try because that's my job. I'm just going to give it a try. I'm just going to go out there and follow your prescription. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So, that being said, I'm willing to go ahead and remove that item from this estimate at this time, provided that you're willing to revisit this when it's no longer hypothetical and we're out there actually building and swinging hammers. And if that comes up like that, I understand I would have to come back with justification and evidence and proof as to why it is needed. Okay, that's the C bucket. So I'm willing to remove it from the estimate at this time, provided you're willing to revisit this when it's no longer a hypothetical and it becomes an actual and we're there actually swinging hammers. Fair enough? Okay, great. I say okay, great, because they're always going to say fair enough. How can they say no? They can't, because remember back to the adjuster in the foyer with your client that says, hey, this is your contractor, Chad. Well, if something comes up, during the project, Chad here will let us know, and that will open up what's called a supplement. I mean, seriously. So anything comes up during a job, which is every job, it's always going to be something coming up during the job, then it's going to become a supplement. You're going to inform the insurance company that something came up during the job, and so that's how it's handled. So you did not lose that item. You didn't lose it. Instead, you've isolated it. Those items where they didn't want to give you, they didn't want to approve them, now you know what those are. So, but if you went and just built the job, just went and built it, and then came to them after and said, hey, here's all the problems we had, and here's all the proof of everything we did, you don't know which of those items they're going to resist on. Because as you know, I think most of you know, you never know what they're going to resist on. You can kind of have an idea of the common things that they resist on, right? But sometimes it's like the insurance company, they prove the whole thing, right? They prove a bunch of things. They give you this great thing. They're like, how come all of them can't be that way?
So I can kind of see that being a point if you're doing roofing, but a lot of the stuff that we do, which is
Mitigation.
Yeah.
Like, well, no.
I know exactly what needs done. So there really isn't anything. If I do my estimate right up front after all the mitigation is done, there really, unless something that I missed, there really shouldn't be any supplements. And again, maybe prices go up or something like that. But.
Yeah, well, you must be doing a really good. I mean, because you open up the walls and you don't know what's behind the walls.
Well, no,
you know what I mean?
Opened them up.
Oh, you already opened because of the
mitigation,
mitigation. The mitigation phase. You already know exactly.
Yes, you know exactly.
No, that makes sense. I see what you're saying. But I don't want anybody to think that this is at all just totally about roofing, because it's definitely not. I mean, like all of the interior stuff definitely comes into play here. The only difference is mitigation, because mitigation is incurred, and you're right, you do see, but I still think if you're doing it right, I mean, there's still things that come up. There's still things that come up. I refuse to believe that there's jobs where nothing comes up, you know.
90% of our jobs, what our estimate is up front on the rebuilds, that's what they are.
This is why I need you to come with me. I need this guy to come with me. You know what I mean? Anybody else?
We do our estimate.
No, I believe you. I believe you. You're exceptional at that, right?
We
So
spend a lot of time doing the estimates, so
that's great.
we sell it to them.
That's great.
And to the adjusters.
So you don't need to tell them that you're that wonderful. You know what I mean? In other words, like you want to leave open the door at all times. At all times, leave the door open to be able to come back to them more and more and more, right? So I just think that if you know what those items are that they're resisting on, this is a way where you can find out. You can force out the information. Where are they resisting, right? And it's like 10 items. You see what I mean? Those 10 items, you put a spotlight on it during the build. And what I mean by that is, I was talking about earlier about cameras at job sites. Like I think there's no shortage of documentation that you should, like if we know that they don't want to pay for the flashing, for example, which by that flashing, that's all pipe jacks, all vents, all that stuff needs to be replaced now. Maybe not like the power attic vent itself, but the base and the flashing around it. Not maybe the skylight itself, but the cladding and the flashing around. Yeah. So there's a lot of different things. Like most everything on the roof has to get replaced based on building code. But like now that I know which items they've been that they don't want to pay for during the build, I'm going to go also if it's flashing, I would literally have pictures like the guy picking up the flashing, holding it in his hand, photo. And then but this can be used literally for anything on any job, okay? Like for example, it can be used for overhead and profit. That's another one. Like so somebody asked me about overhead and profit. This is where I get into a little bit of overhead and profit. You know, I come from the old school, which is any 3 trades or more gets you overhead and profit. That's the way it used to be, you know, for forever. I mean, but it was never a rule like that was written down anywhere. It wasn't like it was in people's policies. It wasn't like it was a law. It was just like an unwritten rule, like a standard that the industry sort of followed, and all the insurance companies followed that, which is any 3 trades, you know, roofing, drywall, flooring, you know, that fencing or something, you know, insulation, drywall, painting, that's 3 trades. That would give you overhead and profit, right? So like it's not that way anymore, but they never changed any rules. They just sort of moved that unwritten rule, and everybody just kind of followed along, and the trend changed over time. I think it started like in 2011 specifically, but and it was started by State Farm, and everyone else moved in line, which is no longer 3 trades anymore. Like I was talking to this lady adjuster one time, who I had like 7 trades, and she didn't want to give me overhead and profit. And I was like, I have 7 trades. She goes, oh, that doesn't have anything to do with it. Hey, what do you mean? She goes, well, it doesn't matter how many trades. He goes, yes, it does. Are you a new adjuster? You know, she's like, oh no, it has to reach a level of complexity and or coordination that's required of a contractor. And you're like, huh? Well, it has to reach a level of complexity and or coordination that's required of a contractor. That's the new rule, guys. Like as of not new anymore, it's been going on for a while, right? Since 2011 or there about that time. and everybody's in line now. But again, it's not a law, guys. Like there's been rulings and cases and stuff, but there's not a law that says, they have to pay overhead and profit and this and that. There's different, interpretations of policies and things that have set precedents, but there's no law that I know of that says that they have to pay overhead and profit, okay? So you have to actually, so instead of me saying, hey, Mr. Adjuster, the policy says that you have to give them overhead and profit no matter what they're, because it does have language for that, but now I'm out of bounds. I can't use the policy language to force it to them, right? So I have to come up with other reasons. Well, what do? I always go with the grain. I go with their rules, right? With it. So their rule is that they want to require complexity and coordination. So I'm going to go all in to prove complexity and coordination. That's my answer, guys. I'm going to go with them. I'm going to embrace it. And then I'm going to prove complexity and coordination. And how do you do? What does that even mean, really? It's just kind of hard, man. They've now moved this rule where it's real subjective. It's like a gray area. I will say interior work, if you're doing interior work, especially, if it's more than just a simple little spot repair or something, which it usually is, that's more of a reason why it shouldn't be killsed over. Remember the kills over water spot? You should do it right because now it's more complex, right? It requires more coordination. It's a better reason why, or even more of a reason why you need to do a better inspection. Because if you find more damage, the job's going to be more complex and it's going to require more coordination. So I get this question a lot where people ask me, do you put overhead and profit when it's just a roof only? No, because it's been maybe a decade since I've ever worked on any type of an estimate that was just a roof only. If there's damage to the roof, there's damage to a lot of other things too. So you see what I mean? Like it's a mistake, I think, if I'm dealing with an estimate that only has a roof. What caused the damage to the roof? There's got to be problems with other parts of this property. So like somebody missed something. So it starts with the inspection, right? You got to get more items on the estimate. Now it becomes more complex. And when you find those items, you don't just spot paint over it and skip over stuff on the inside to just focus on the roof. You need to do everything because that'll all add towards your case of the complexity and coordination. So like if I'm on there and I make a case with them during my B bucket and they ask me, why do you have overhead and profit? Overhead and profit's not required on this. And I'm like, well, the reason why I have overhead and profit is because this job reaches a level of complexity and or coordination that's required of a general contractor. I'm glad you asked. So coordination, I think they think that, if you can have all your subs all there at the same time, kind of doing everything at once, and they're not really stepping on each other's toes, so the trades aren't overlapping on each other, and you don't, like the client's schedule of getting in and out. I think that's why interior is easier to get. If you have interior, they don't just offer it to you, but you can usually get it, no problem. They do this thing now where they don't give you the overhead and profit on the roof, but they'll give it to you on the interior, right? But yeah, I don't want to accept that. I'm going to fight that, But it's just like the interior. It's harder because the client, has to be home usually, or it's more difficult to maybe get in and out. Now you have contents that maybe are in the way. Another reason to go all in with the contents, right? Really do the good job with the contents, the packing and the storing. It all adds complexity. But if that's hard to do all at once, and you have to have these trades scheduled out separately to make room for each other, and you got to get inside and outside of a home and into the property, and clients have to be there and not be there, then that's a lot of coordination right there. Right? So if there's anything you can do to prove that, that's what you do. And then the complexity is really like, how complex is it? Also listen, if any of you guys use a CRM of any kind, like Job Nimbus or something like that, where you kind of enter in all of your acts, and there's a lot of them out there. I don't want to point out anything specific that you need, but it's a good idea to do that. Like everything you do at a restaurant or wherever you go, everything gets put into the computer, to the database, right? Like new order, new payment received, like everything, every transaction, it gets put into the database. You got to really, I recommend doing the same thing for your businesses. It's 2022, And if you do that, then you can export all the actions that are associated with that job. So if this sounds like too technical for you or too new school or whatever, okay. Get a log book. Get a log book, right? Where you literally just document and log everything that happens on any particular job, down to Jimmy left the job site at 9:32 a.m. to go to ABC Supply to get another stick of drip edge. Like every little thing. And because I really believe a lot of this is about bad storytelling, you know? It's what really true storytelling. So like if we went together and went to an Orioles game, you know, me and you, we went to an Orioles game together, okay? I don't know if you like them or not, but we went. I don't know why we went, but we went. It was a dream I had. And so we went, and we come back and we're telling all these guys how it was, you know? And you're talking about, you know, I got a hot dog, had a beer, you know, it's pretty uneventful, you know, did this, did that, they were down in the eighth and blah, 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 you know? And you're just kind of telling the story. And me, I talk all the time. I just talk. And my sister, don't say a word. You know, but I talk more than you maybe, right? And so my version of the exact same story has all these extra details in it. Was I lying? Were you lying? No, we weren't trying to be deceitful. It's just, you know, I talked more. So I remembered more, and I wanted them to know all the things we did, you know? So I think that's what it is. If you can think of it that way, it's just true storytelling. So you can go in there and you're just doing a half job of trying to convince the insurance company what you really did. You don't have the documentation, you were slacking, you didn't have anybody out there taking photos, you see what I mean? It's what are you willing to do to prove it? Like, I don't want to hear any more whining about it if you're not doing the work, you know, to prove it, to put it in. That's kind of where I'm going with this, right? So like, I think you can prove complexity and coordination with cameras, you know, video cameras even. You know, how much are you willing to go? You know, one time, a number of years ago, I had an insurance adjuster ask me, I know you guys have heard this a lot, you know, by now, which is, send me over your subcontractor invoices, right? Send me over your sub invoices. And I was like, now, this is different. This is not a bid item, okay? A bid item is where, like, you know, let's say I'm replacing an AC unit, okay? And in Xactimate, I'm coming up with, like, I can only get it up to $5,000 with all the items I put in there. My AC guy comes with this estimate of $7,500, you know, and I ask him, what all is in that? Like, how many linear feet of this and that? I'm trying to find items in Xactimate to put in there, because usually when I do that, the Xactimate estimate's higher, and that's the one I want to use. I don't want to show them my subcontractor invoice. If I'm able to find it for lower than exact, that's my win. That's none of the insurance company's business, you know? So when they asked me for that, I was like, and by the way, if I can't make that work, if the sub's estimate is higher than I can possibly get in Xactimate, well, then I'll just submit their estimate as a bid item, and I will reveal it. I'll say, attached is the estimate, and I'll put it in a JPEG. You know, attached is the estimate from such and such heating and air, and it's for this amount, and it shows everything, and that's why I have the $7,500 as that line item. And I'll also put the 10 and 10 overhead and profit on top of that, right? So, but I noticed that one time an adjuster asked me to send my subcontractor invoices. It didn't have anything to do with any of that. And I'm like, why? Again, I'm thinking, this must be a new adjuster. Why are they asking me that? And so, and I resisted, and the adjuster was like, oh, and I was like, you know, my prices, what I pay my subs is none of your business. You know what I mean? That's where I draw the line. You don't need to know that. And the adjuster was like, oh no, that's cool. You can black out the prices. You can just, you know, redact the prices. I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, well, why do they want it, you know? And he said, well, I'm giving you the overhead and profit if you can send me the subcontractor invoices. You can redact them out. But they're just trying to say, like this proves the coordination. You know what I mean? This proves the coordination. The complexity of trades overlapping, you know, you got to be able to tell the story of how it actually goes. Maybe photos showing all these different trucks, different places. There's not enough room in this place. There could be all kinds of reasons. And what do these rules even mean? We don't even know. So whatever reasons you come up with them. You know what I mean? Like, come up with anything you can. But when I learned that about the subcontractor invoices, now I just, whenever they resist on the overhead and profit, then I'll just go ahead and lead out with the sub, like they're not even asking me for them, and I'll just provide them. Like, here you go. See, I have a bunch of subcontractor invoices. You can see, you know, there's a lot of coordinating. Here's every action that was ever taken on this job. It was complex like crazy, like, because where's the line? Where's the threshold? There really isn't. It's so subjective. It can be interpreted in any number of ways. So if I have that fight and I really make that demonstration to them and they're like, nope, we're not going to give you the overhead and profit. We're just not. I don't agree with it. So, okay, well, I think what I hear you saying is that, these trades are not going to overlap on each other. It's not going to be that complex. It's not going to require a bunch of coordination. And so it can all just kind of be done at the same time, all hands on deck. I think that's what I'm hearing you say. And if you put overhead and profit on there, they probably kick it back down. We don't want that. So I'll tell you what, I'm willing at this time to remove the overhead and profit from this estimate. And I'm going to go try to do it like you're calling for, like you're prescribing, right? I'm going to go out there and we're going to try to get everybody to do it, all hands on deck, all at the same time. And we'll see if we can't do it without making it complex. Okay? Now, I don't think that's going to be possible, Mr. Adjuster, but I sure am certainly willing to give it a try because that's my job. My job is to perform all repairs that are prescribed by you, so I'm going to head out there and try to give it a try. I don't think it's going to be possible, but I'm willing to remove this item from the estimate this time, provided you're willing to revisit this when it's no longer a hypothetical and we actually know just how complex and how much coordination that it's going to require, or how much complexity and coordination that it's going to require when we're actually there swinging hammers. And I know that I'll have to bring you evidence and documentation as to why that is. Fair enough? Okay, great. They're always going to say fair enough. I've had a lot of adjusters say, oh, okay, fair enough, but we're not going to pay for it then either. I was like, okay, great, got it. But I'm certainly going to, I'm going all in now to make my case for overhead and profit throughout that job. I want to prove complexity and coordination like crazy, where if they would have approved that in the beginning, now I don't care about approving complexity. I don't have to do any photographs or any videos or any subcontract. I don't have to do any of that stuff, right? Because I know they've already approved it. But if I go through that A bucket, B bucket, C process, and I find out they don't want to give me overhead and profit, it doesn't mean that I don't have it. I'm still getting it. You know what I mean? I'm still getting it. Go for it, buddy.
On the exterior part of that roof, are you wasting their time or pissing them off if you break it down with a demolition crew, a tarp crew to put it on, a tarp crew to take it off, and then your install, and then your cleanup crew?
I think there could be a case to be made for that, but
Nobody really does that?
I think it's a good, maybe you could use it for certain scenarios to your advantage where they're resisting certain things. You say, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do it, like kind of what you're saying earlier, right? I think you can use it tactically in certain strategic, situations.
Not in every case, but.
Right. Like, what if the deck is bad and you know it? And by the way, you should know it because you should be doing attic inspections. Right. And if you can see water spots on the deck, that's water-soaked decking, you know what I mean? Any of the underlayment, any layers underneath it felt, if it's wet, that's water-saturated underlayment. So those are two codes that should, force a requirement, at least to cut out the wet spot in that section. But now you've exposed the roof cavity. So now you have other requirements. So the R values have to be brought up, and is the deck, is it the right thickness to begin with? That's right. And if it's not, so I usually like to get these decks bought beforehand. I think you can, but then you have the insurance companies are like, and they'll say, we don't pay for rot. Well, I never said rot. I never said that. I'm talking about building codes, right? But I think that your best bet to get the decking bought is beforehand, okay? But then they disagree, and you don't agree to just get rid of the deck. Oh no, you still have to comply with the thing. You're just saying, okay, I'm going to try to do it your way, and this is where I get a lot of people that push back on me. They're like, well, how are you going to do that? You're out there in the middle of the thing, how are you going to, you can do it a number of different ways. I know if it's me, I would kind of scream bloody murder, emergency, I would, call the insurance adjuster like back to back. I would hit him with a bunch of emails, put it on the record, send it to the inside with photos like, oh no, we're here and it's bad. It's worse than I thought. And there's weather coming and what do we do? Put it on them, right? But if you don't get a response or even a satisfactory response at some point and you're out there, then I'm moving forward. That's just me. You can make your own judgment calls. But I think if I've done enough documentation, it's experience that would tell me to move forward because I know I'm going to get it. Some of you may be like, I don't know, man. That's a big investment. I have to redeck the whole thing. But what if you have to do it anyway, man? What if it's required by law anyway? You got to do it anyway. So I just kind of think there's no choice but to move forward, document it like crazy, get a bunch of proof, bunch of evidence, and then stick it to them. But like you run the risk of them not approving it, and that would be on you because you move forward. But I just think I can win that. Look, I'm on the record. It was an emergency. We had to move forward. What did you want us to do?
We discussed it prior to that.
And we that's all the more reason to do it beforehand and put it on the record. Because it's like, I kind of look at these things, guys, like it could all go into litigation. That's what they're used to. They're used to appraisals and PAs and litigators, right? So that like this is all we're gonna get sued eventually. So let's be real careful. So when we do get sued, we don't have anything against us. We have good faith, no bad faith. We did everything the right way. But they never do everything the right way. They don't. So I like to have everything documented. I'm never going to threaten any kind of litigation. I'm the anti-litigation guy. I'm the guy that's like, hey, I don't mean to be, it's really maybe not my place. I'm kind of a fly on the wall, but I'm just saying, I was talking to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and they were kind of saying, that if that part's not approved, that they're going to be hot. I mean, because, I just really want to see if there's anything I could do to maybe help from keeping this train from going off the track. You know what I mean? Because I can see it kind of going off the track. I'm just like the peacekeeper, the diplomat, anything I could do to just keep us moving forward. There's so much, it's all truth. Like, I'm telling you, I'm really weird about insurance companies. Like, if they ask me how I'm doing and I'm not doing good, I'm not going to tell them I'm doing good. Because I would be lying to an insurance company. I'm very, very, very literal. Like, I'm very careful, especially on the record, I don't want to say anything that's even halfway irresponsible.
Have you had any success of getting more than 20% O&P?
In this area I have. I don't know, and I'm a little bit out of it. I was wondering if anybody was going to say that because I don't know about here in particular, but I remember the Baltimore market is 25, 10 and 15 has been doing that. 10 and 15, they're still doing that. I'm a little bit out of practice in Baltimore, so I didn't want to speak on that. But my experience tells me it was always 10 and 15. I just don't know what they've changed it. But.
Yeah, because from what I hear, if you try to get an SBA loan, they want your profit margin to be at least 30.
Well, listen, this is a difference, right? Because people hear the profit margin and they confuse it with the overhead and profit.
Right.
It's not, the overhead and profit is not supposed, that 10 and 10 is not really, it's not going to be your profit margin ever, you know what I mean? Right. I think anybody that thinks that is misunderstood, like adjusters, if they start talking like that, it's not enough money to run a business with 20% profit, right? So, but I think, I will say, if you do this stuff properly, you should be at upwards of even as high as 70% in profit, not 20, you know what I mean? Like if you're doing it right, which is why I also think at some point, you like some of these deals that gets to the certain point, like how much do you really need to have, Like I think a lot of these things like where you've won, you've done really well, but they still have a couple items and you're still mad about it, just let it go, man, How much profit do you really need to make? I mean, if you have one job and you only have one insurance job and it's not going well, I get it. But if you have a number of jobs that you're working on throughout the year and you're constantly smashing them at 50, 60, 70% in profit, then I think at some point, like I'm not going to argue over 10 feet of drip edge and spend an hour doing it. I'm just not going to do that. My time's worth way more money than that. I know, and all of yours are too. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other question? Yeah, go for it.
I had a question about the decking. So we came across a house recently that didn't have attic access, and then we were tearing the roof off.
Sure.
Space decking,
Happens a
and
lot,
it
yeah.
was wet.
Oh, well, that's a...
So do we stop the job and like tarp it, or do we just do it?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily tarp it yet because you're going to have to charge them for tarping, right? So I wouldn't tarp. I would just stop and contact the insurance company, see if I can get an approval right then and there, because that's an exigent circumstance. That's an emergency circumstance. And I would handle it as such, like this is an emergency. But that's a laydown. The space decking, that's a building code in and of itself, and it's wet. I would also make sure I add content manipulation for the attic. Oh, there's no attic, I guess. Or no attic access. If there is an attic, it's going to make a mess to the attic. So contents, protection, manipulation, all different context.
You'll need, in order to really
I always say when I talk about the codes, guys, that some of you some people are going to be real analytical and really take to this stuff. And he's one of those guys right here. He's one of those guys, which is a compliment, by the way, because like you can go deeper and farther into the codes, and broader. Whereas me, I'm more just like broad. It's too much for me. It's like a Japanese language, I can't understand. And so it took forever for me to simplify it, and I've got it. And so I can go into any other code and dive down deep, but I truly don't enjoy it, guys. I don't enjoy it. I think you feel like you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, like if you have that engineer type mindset, if you enjoy it, like there's guys, because like the rafters have to be a certain span, and it just one thing leads to another, and at some point, you could be taking apart the whole house and rebuild it. But the only thing then is, what's the client gonna be wanting to do? Like you gotta have to temper it down. All right, go ahead, Shane. I want to talk about something here for a second.